The rain pattered against the windows of my lakeside cabin as I stared at the anniversary card in my hands. 7 years of marriage, and all I had to show for it was this empty feeling in my chest and a business I had poured my heart and soul into. I glanced at my phone as it lit up with a notification. Michael. My husband never called this late unless something was wrong. A knot formed in my stomach as his name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. The sound of rain, filling the silence. "Sarah, we need to talk." His voice was cold, distant, like he was speaking to a stranger instead of his wife of 7 years. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air between us. My anniversary getaway, a surprise I had planned for us, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I gripped the edge of the wooden table, steadying myself. "What did you just say?" My voice remained calm, surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "You heard me. I want a divorce. I've already made arrangements to sell Evergreen Coffee. The papers are being drawn up tomorrow. I need the money to start over. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." I stood by the cabin window, watching raindrops race down. The glass. Portland looked beautiful even in the storm, the city lights glimmering in the distance. Michael's voice continued through the phone, each word more callous than the last. "Rachel and I need the capital to start our new venture. The coffee business was never really my passion anyway, you know that." Rachel, of course. His assistant manager at our flagship location. The pieces clicked into place. The late-night inventory checks, the weekend business trips, the sudden interest in the downtown location where she worked. I'd suspected something for months, but had buried those thoughts, convinced I was being paranoid. "I see," I replied, my tone betraying nothing of the storm raging inside me. "And when were you planning to tell me all this?" "Today's our anniversary, Michael." He paused, and I could almost see him checking the date on his watch, the realization crossing his face. Then came a dismissive laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Is it? Well, consider this my gift to you then. Freedom. The business was struggling anyway. We'll both be better off with a clean break." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed myself a small smile. "You're right about one thing. A clean break is exactly what we need." "Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow with the divorce papers and the business sale agreement. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay when you get back from wherever you are." "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." I ended the call before he could say another word. The cabin suddenly felt too small, too confined. I stepped onto the covered porch, letting the cool evening air wash over my face. The rain had settled into a gentle drizzle, the lake before me calm and serene despite the earlier storm, much like the sense of clarity that was now replacing my initial shock. Michael believed he had the upper hand. He thought that by blindsiding me with divorce on our anniversary, he would leave me devastated, unable to think clearly enough to protect myself. What he didn't know was that I had seen this coming for months. The emotional distance, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained expenses, they all pointed to one conclusion. Our marriage was over long before tonight's call. But Michael had made one critical mistake. He assumed the business was his to sell. 6 months ago, after finding a lipstick stain on his collar, cliché, I know, I started preparing for the worst. I consulted with Jessica, my best friend since college and a brilliant corporate attorney. Together, we reviewed the business, structure of Evergreen Coffee, the chain of coffee shops Michael and I had built from a single struggling location to 3 thriving cafes across Portland. What Michael had conveniently forgotten was that when we opened our 3rd location last year, we had restructured the business. I had suggested creating a new LLC with me as the primary owner to protect our assets in case of any liability issues. Michael, always disinterested in the boring paperwork, had signed everything without reading a single page. He was too busy, working late with Rachel, to notice that the restructuring gave me controlling interest in all 3 locations. I walked back inside the cabin and opened my laptop. With a few clicks, I pulled up the business ownership documents Jessica had helped me prepare. There it was in black and white. Sarah Mitchell, 75% owner of Evergreen Coffee LLC. Michael Mitchell, 25% owner. I picked up my phone and texted Jessica. He finally showed his hand. He thinks he's selling the business tomorrow. Time for Plan B. Jessica's response came almost immediately. I've been waiting for this call. I'll alert Daniel and Emma that they can proceed with the purchase. All the paperwork is ready. I smiled to myself. Daniel and Emma Peterson, a lovely couple who had approached me 3 weeks ago about buying Evergreen Coffee, had already signed a purchase agreement with me, the actual majority owner, for a sum that far exceeded the market value. The deal was set to close in 2 days. Michael had no idea that I had already sold the business he was planning to steal from me. I poured myself a glass of the champagne I had initially brought to celebrate our anniversary and took a long sip. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was supposed to be a weekend of reconciliation, one last attempt to save what we had built together. Instead, it had become the beginning of my new life. The next morning, I packed my bags and checked out of the cabin a day early. The 3-hour drive back to Portland gave me time to organize my thoughts. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had a clear plan. Our craftsman-style house looked the same as when I'd left it 2 days ago, yet everything had changed. I unlocked the door, half expecting to find Michael and Rachel inside, but the house was empty. Michael's car wasn't in the driveway, probably at her place, I thought. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at our kitchen island, scrolling through my emails. There it was, confirmation from Daniel and Emma that the funds for purchasing Evergreen Coffee had been transferred to the escrow account. All that was left was the final signing tomorrow. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia, my other close friend who managed our original Evergreen location. The staff meeting went well. Everyone knows you're the one who cared about them all along. Team Sarah all the way. I smiled. The employees had always been like family to me. I had insisted on paying living wages, providing health care, and creating a supportive work environment. Michael had fought me on these unnecessary expenses at every turn. It was no surprise the staff would stand with me. Around noon, I heard a key in the front door. Michael walked in, stopping short when he saw me sitting at the kitchen island. "You're back early," he said, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "It's my house, too," I replied calmly, taking another sip of coffee. Michael tossed, his keys on the counter, and crossed his arms. "Did you get my email? My lawyer sent over the divorce papers this morning. I saw them. And? Are you going to make this difficult?" I set my mug down and looked directly at him. "No, Michael. I'm not going to make anything difficult for you. In fact, I've already signed the divorce papers and emailed them back." Confusion crossed his face. He had expected tears, pleading, maybe even anger. My composure was throwing him off balance. "Good," he said, recovering quickly. "That's good. What about the business sale? I need your signature on those documents too." "About that," I said, standing up and walking to the refrigerator as if we were having the most casual conversation in the world. "I have some news you might find interesting." "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the folder I had taped to the inside of the refrigerator door, a hiding place I knew Michael would never check since he rarely cooked. I laid it on the counter and slid it toward him. "You might want to take a look at this." Michael eyed the folder suspiciously before opening it. His expression changed from confusion to disbelief as he scanned the documents inside. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "That's the business ownership agreement for Evergreen Coffee LLC. If you look at page 3, you'll see that I own 75% of the business. You only own 25%. His face flushed with anger. This is a forgery. We're equal partners. We've always been equal partners. We were, until last year's restructuring, the one you were too busy to read before signing. Remember? You said you trusted me to handle the boring paperwork. Michael frantically flipped through the pages, his hands shaking slightly. This doesn't change anything. I've already found a buyer. The deal is practically done. Is that so? And who exactly is buying our business? A company called Summit Brews. They're offering a fair price. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Summit Brews. Interesting. And when did you meet with them? Last month. What does it matter? It matters because you can't sell what you don't own, Michael. You need the majority owner's consent, and I never gave it. Michael slammed the folder shut. You're bluffing. No court would uphold this. We built this business together. Yes, we did. And then you decided to throw it all away for Rachel. How is she, by the way? Still believing all your promises about the fancy new life you're going to give her with the money from selling my business? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. His eyes widened. Did you really think I didn't know? The lipstick that wasn't mine, the late nights, the weekend conferences that didn't exist? I've known for months, Michael. His composure cracked. Sarah, listen, it's not what you think. Rachel and I… Save it, I cut him off. I don't care anymore. What I do care about is my business, and I have some news for you about that too. I pulled out my phone and showed him the email from Daniel and Emma Peterson. I sold Evergreen Coffee 3 weeks ago. The deal closes tomorrow. The color drained from Michael's face. You… what? I sold it. To Daniel and Emma Peterson. They've been customers since we opened our first location. They love the brand and everything it stands for. They're keeping all the current staff and expanding to 2 more locations next year. You can't do this, Michael whispered, his voice hoarse. I already did. As the majority owner, it was my decision to make. What about my 25%? What about my share? I smiled. Don't worry. Your share of the proceeds is being placed in an escrow account. After deducting the amount you embezzled from the business over the past year, oh yes, I have those records too, you'll receive what's left. My lawyers will be in touch about that. Michael's face contorted with rage. You planned this all along, didn't you? You manipulative… Careful, Michael, I warned, my voice steady. I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who tried to steal a business. I simply protected what was mine. He stared at me, speechless for perhaps the first time since I'd known him. The man who always had an answer, always found a way to twist things to his advantage, was finally at a loss for words. You should pack your things, I said calmly. I'd like you out of the house by tonight. This is my house too, he sputtered. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name. Another document you signed without reading last year when we refinanced. You'll find that information in the folder as well, page 7. Michael looked defeated, his shoulders slumping as the reality of his situation sank in. He had thought he was so clever, planning his escape with Rachel, using the business he thought he could sell out from under me. Instead, he was the one left with nothing. Where am I supposed to go? He asked, his voice small. I'm sure Rachel has room for you, I replied, picking up my coffee mug again. Though she might be less eager to have you move in when she finds out you're not bringing the windfall you promised. As if on cue, Michael's phone began to ring. The screen lit up with Rachel's name. He glanced at it but didn't answer. You should take that, I suggested. She's probably wondering why the money from Summit Brews hasn't appeared in your account yet. Michael snatched his phone and stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam moments later. Through the window, I watched him get into his car and drive away, his phone pressed to his ear. I could only imagine the conversation he was having with Rachel. I took a deep breath and looked around the kitchen, the heart of the home we had shared. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sadness. Not for the end of our marriage or the loss of Michael, but for the death of what I had once believed was true love. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Just confirmed with the Petersons. We're all set for the signing tomorrow at 10 a.m. How did it go with Michael?" I typed back, "Exactly as expected. He didn't take it well." Jessica's response came quickly. "He never deserved you, or the business. See you tomorrow, boss lady." I smiled at her message. Boss lady. I had never thought of myself that way, but maybe it was time I did. I had built Evergreen Coffee into a successful chain through hard work, dedication, and a genuine love for what we created. Michael might have been the face of the company, charming customers and investors alike, but I was its heart and soul. That evening, Olivia and Jessica came over with takeout and wine. We sat in my living room, the space already feeling different without Michael's presence. "To new beginnings," Jessica said, raising her glass. "And to knowing your worth," Olivia added. I clinked my glass against theirs. "And to good friends who have your back when everything falls apart." We laughed and talked late into the night. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light, unburdened. The weight of suspicion, of pretending not to know about Michael's betrayal, was gone. "What will you do now?" Olivia asked as the evening wound down. I hadn't given it much thought. I had been so focused on protecting the business and preparing for the divorce that I hadn't considered what came next. "I don't know," I admitted. "Travel, maybe. Take some time for myself." "Or," Jessica suggested, "you could use your share of the sale to start something new, something that's entirely yours from the beginning." The idea resonated with me. Something new, something mine. The next morning, I met Daniel and Emma Peterson at Jessica's office to finalize the sale of Evergreen Coffee. As we signed the papers, I felt a mix of emotions: pride in what I had built, sadness at letting it go, but mostly excitement for the future. "We'll take good care of it," Emma promised, squeezing my hand. "Your baby is in good hands." "I know it is," I replied. "That's why I chose you." As I left the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "We need to talk, please. I made a mistake." I deleted the message without replying. There was nothing left to say. Over the next few weeks, Michael tried several times to contact me, calls, texts, even showing up at Jessica's office once. Each time I maintained my boundaries. Our marriage was over. The business was sold. It was time to move forward. 2 months after our divorce was finalized, I used part of my proceeds from the business sale to open a small bookstore cafe in a quiet neighborhood of Portland. Unlike Evergreen, which had grown into a bustling chain with hundreds of customers, daily this new venture was intimate, cozy, a place where people could linger over coffee and lose themselves in a good book. I named it New Chapter, both for the books it would house and for what it represented in my life. Olivia joined me as co-manager, bringing her warm personality and customer service expertise to our new venture. One rainy afternoon, as I was arranging a display of local authors, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see Rachel standing there, looking uncomfortable. "Hello, Sarah," she said, her voice hesitant. "Rachel," I acknowledged, straightening up. "What brings you here?" She glanced around the store, taking in the shelves of books and the small cafe area in the corner. "Nice place. Very... you." "Thank you. Did you need something?" Rachel shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted to apologize. For everything with Michael, I didn't know about the business, about your anniversary. He lied to... me too." I wasn't surprised. Michael had always been skilled at telling people what they wanted to hear. "Where is he now?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. I don't know. We broke up after everything fell apart. Last I heard, he was trying to get investors for some tech startup. I nodded, unsurprised. Michael always had another angle, another scheme. I'm sorry, Rachel said again. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am. You're right. It doesn't change anything, I replied. But thank you for saying it. After she left, I sat in one of the comfortable reading chairs by the window, watching the rain fall. My life had changed so dramatically in just a few months. The pain of Michael's betrayal had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence in my own strength and resilience. I thought about the path that had led me here, the signs I had initially ignored, the preparations I had made once I faced the truth. The moment of reckoning when Michael realized he had underestimated me. There was a certain poetic justice to it all. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Dinner tonight to celebrate 1 month of new chapter being open? I smiled and typed, Absolutely. I've got a lot to celebrate. As I put my phone away, I looked around at the bookstore, my bookstore. This wasn't the life I had planned when I married Michael 7 years ago. It was better. This life was authentically mine, built on my terms. Sometimes the greatest gift is the push you need to create your own happiness. Michael's request for a divorce on our anniversary had been that push for me. Little did he know, I had already taken the first step toward my freedom by selling our business. In the end, I didn't just survive Michael's betrayal, I thrived despite it, and that was the best revenge of all. What would you do if you were in Sarah's position? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone betrayed your trust? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, self-discovery, and finding strength in unexpected places. The next morning, I awoke in my own bed for the first time in days. The silence in the house felt different. Not the tense quiet that had grown between Michael and me over the past year, but a peaceful solitude. I stretched and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Michael and a text that simply read, "We need to talk about the business. Call me." I set the phone down without responding. There was nothing left to discuss. I made myself a cup of coffee, a special blend from our flagship Evergreen coffee store, and sat at the kitchen island, opening my laptop to check my emails. There it was, a message from Jessica with the final contract for the business sale attached. All that was needed was my signature to finalize the deal with Daniel and Emma Peterson. I had already verbally accepted their offer, but signing these papers would make it official. Jessica had added a note. The Petersons increased their offer by 15%. They really want this business, Sarah. You built something valuable. Don't forget. That. I smiled, taking a sip of my coffee. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Michael had taken credit for Evergreen's success at industry events and investor meetings. He was the face, the charismatic spokesperson who shook hands and closed deals. Meanwhile, I was the one who developed our signature blends, who built relationships with local suppliers, who created the warm atmosphere that kept customers coming back. I was the one who remembered employees' birthdays and children's names. I was the heart of Evergreen Coffee, and soon I would be compensated for it. My finger hovered over the digital signature line. Once I signed, there would be no going back. But wasn't that the point? Michael had already made his choice. Now I was making mine. I clicked and signed my name. As I was about to close my laptop, another email notification appeared. This one from an unfamiliar address, summitbrewscorporate.net. The subject line read, "Urgent, regarding purchase of Evergreen Coffee." I opened it, curiosity piqued. The message was formal, addressed to both Michael and me. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, we at Summit Brews Corporation are looking forward to finalizing our acquisition of Evergreen Coffee this week, as per our discussions. With Mr. Mitchell, we're prepared to transfer the agreed-upon sum of $1.2 million once all paperwork is completed. Please confirm receipt of this email and your availability for our final meeting on Thursday. Best regards, Victor Harmon, Acquisitions Director, Summit Brews Corporation. I stared at the screen, a mixture of anger and vindication washing over me. So this was Michael's buyer, and $1.2 million? The Petersons' final offer was nearly double that amount. Michael wasn't just trying to sell the business behind my back. He was underselling it, probably to expedite the deal and run off with Rachel before I discovered the truth. I hit reply and began typing. Dear Mr. Harmon, thank you for your email. I regret to inform you that Evergreen Coffee is no longer available for purchase. As the majority owner, 75% of the business, I have already accepted another offer and signed the final paperwork this morning. It appears my husband failed to disclose that he only owns 25% of Evergreen Coffee and does not have the legal authority to sell the business without my consent. I apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused you and your company. Sincerely, Sarah Mitchell, majority owner, Evergreen Coffee, LLC. I hit send, then forwarded the entire exchange to Jessica with a note. Michael's buyer just reached out. I've handled it, but you should be aware. Her response came within minutes. This could be considered fraud if he represented himself as having full ownership. Do you want to pursue this legally? I thought about it for a moment. Did I want to drag this out to make Michael suffer more? Part of me did. But another part, the part that was already feeling lighter, freer, just wanted to move on. Not at this point, I replied. Let's focus on closing our deal with the Petersons, but keep the evidence in case we need it. I had just finished my coffee when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Michael, but a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Is this Sarah Mitchell? The voice was deep, authoritative. Yes, this is she. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Victor Harmon from Summit Brews. I just received your email, and I must say this is highly irregular. I've been in discussions with your husband for weeks about this acquisition. I took a deep breath. I understand this. Must be frustrating for you, Mr. Harmon. However, I can assure you that what I stated in my email is accurate. I own 75% of Evergreen Coffee. My husband does not have the authority to sell without my consent, which I never gave. I'd be happy to have my attorney send over the ownership documents if you'd like to verify this information. There was a long pause on the other end. That won't be necessary. I'll be having a conversation with Mr. Mitchell about this discrepancy. I think that would be wise. Again, I apologize for any inconvenience. After hanging up, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Not for Michael, he had made his bed, but for Victor Harmon and Summit Brews. They were just another victim of Michael's deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Staff meeting went well. Everyone knows what's happening. They're all asking for you. When are you coming in? I hadn't been to any of our locations since before my ill-fated anniversary getaway. The thought of facing everyone, of explaining the situation, made my stomach knot. But these people weren't just employees. They were my family. They deserved to hear the truth from me. I'll stop by the original location this afternoon, I texted back. I spent the next few hours going through our home, gathering important documents and personal items. If Michael came back, I didn't want there to be any confusion about what belonged to whom. As I worked, I found myself pausing over photographs and mementos from our 7 years together. A picture from our honeymoon in Costa Rica, the wooden spoon from the cooking class we took in Italy, small reminders of happier times. But had they truly been happy? Or had I just been willing myself to believe they were? Looking back, I could see the signs that had been there all along. Michael's gradual emotional withdrawal, his increasing criticism of my ideas for the business, his impatience with my desire to build something meaningful rather than just profitable. I placed the photographs in a box marked with his name. The past was the past. It was time to focus on the future. At 2 p.m., I drove to our original Evergreen coffee location. As I pulled into the parking lot, I was struck by how beautiful the storefront still looked. The warm wood exterior, the hanging plants in the windows, the hand-painted sign I had designed myself. This place had been my dream, my baby, and now I was saying goodbye to it. The moment I walked through the door, the familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans enveloped me. Maya, one of our longest-serving baristas, looked up from the espresso machine and broke into a wide smile. "Sarah, you're here!" Several regular customers turned at the sound of my name, offering warm greetings. I had known some of them since we first opened, had watched their children grow from toddlers to teenagers. This was what Michael had never understood. Evergreen wasn't just a business, it was a community. I made my way behind the counter, where Olivia was waiting. She pulled me into a tight hug. "How are you holding up?" she whispered. "I'm okay," I replied, surprised to find that I meant it. "Is everyone here for the meeting?" She nodded. "In the back room. They're waiting for you." I took a deep breath and followed her through the swinging door that led to our small office and storage area. The space was crowded with familiar faces: baristas, bakers, shift supervisors from all 3 locations. Some looked concerned, others curious. All fell silent when I entered. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I know there have been a lot of rumors circulating, so I wanted to tell you directly what's happening." Over the next half hour, I explained the situation: the impending divorce, the sale of the business to the Petersons, the transition that would take place over the coming weeks. I didn't mention Rachel or Michael's attempted deception. There was no need to drag them into my personal drama. "The most important thing I want you all to know," I concluded, "is that the Petersons have promised to keep all current staff. They value what we've built here and want to continue it. They'll be here tomorrow to meet everyone and answer any questions you might have." A hand went up. Sam, our head baker. "What about you, Sarah? Will you still be involved?" I shook my head. "No. It's time for me to move on to something new, but I'll always be a customer." This drew a few laughs, breaking the tension in the room. After the formal meeting ended, I spent time speaking with each employee individually, reassuring them, answering their questions, saying my goodbyes. Many shared stories of what working at Evergreen had meant to them. More than once, I had to blink back tears. It was nearly closing time when I finally left. As I walked to my car, I noticed a familiar figure leaning against it: Michael. My stomach tightened, but I kept my pace steady. "What are you doing here?" I asked as I approached. He straightened up, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "You sold the business? Without even telling me? That's rich, coming from you. Weren't you planning to do the exact same thing?" "That was different," he snapped. "I needed the money. For us." I raised an eyebrow. "For us? Or for you and Rachel?" He had the decency to look away. "Summit Brews called me. They're backing out of the deal. They think I tried to defraud them." "Didn't you? I thought the business was half mine. I had no idea you'd gone behind my back and changed the ownership structure." I leaned against my car, keeping a careful distance between us. "You signed the papers, Michael. It's not my fault you didn't read them." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen countless times during our marriage, usually when he was trying to figure a way out of a situation he'd created. "Sarah, be reasonable. We built this business together. I deserve half." "You'll get your 25%, I said coolly. "After the lawyers deduct the money you took from the business account for your weekend getaways with Rachel?" His face paled. "You knew about that?" "I've known for months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice $20,000 missing from our accounts? I'm the one who does the books, remember?" Michael's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked defeated. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Summit. Bruise was my only option. Rachel and I were going to use that money to start our own venture. I felt a flash of pity, quickly replaced by resolve. This was not my problem to solve. You're resourceful. You'll figure something out, but it won't involve Evergreen. That chapter is closed. As I moved to open my car door, he grabbed my arm. Sarah, please, we can work this out. Maybe it's not too late to call off the sale. I pulled away from his grasp. It is too late, Michael, for the business and for us. You can't just throw away 7 years. I didn't throw anything away, I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. You did that when you decided Rachel was more important than our marriage, when you tried to sell the business behind my back, when you stole from our accounts. This is the consequence of your choices, not mine. We stood there, the weight of those words hanging between us. In that moment, I saw Michael clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the charming, ambitious man I had fallen in love with, but as someone who had always put himself first, who had seen me and our business as means to an end rather than things to cherish. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice barely audible. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I replied. And now we both have to live with that. I got into my car and drove away, watching him grow smaller in my rearview mirror. It felt symbolic somehow, Michael diminishing as I moved forward. When I arrived home, I found Jessica sitting on my front porch, 2 glasses of wine already, poured. Saw your text about Michael showing up at the coffee shop, she said as I sat down beside her. Figured you might need this. I took the offered glass gratefully. He was waiting at my car, found out about Summit Brews backing out. Are you okay? I considered the question, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Yes, I said finally. Better than okay, actually. It feels like I've been holding my breath for months and now I can finally exhale. Jessica clinked her glass against mine. To exhaling. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our wine. The Petersons called, Jessica said eventually. They want to do a formal handover ceremony on Friday. Invited the local press. Press? Apparently, they're positioning it as a feel-good local business story. Portland entrepreneurs pass the torch to the next generation. That kind of thing. I hadn't considered the public aspect of all this. Evergreen was well known in Portland's coffee scene. People would ask questions, form opinions. The thought made me uneasy. What if Michael shows up? I asked. Makes a scene? Jessica gave me a reassuring smile. I've already thought of that. Their lawyer and I agreed that given the circumstances, Michael's presence would only create confusion. They're going to structure the announcement to focus on you as the founder passing the torch. Michael won't be invited or mentioned. I felt a rush of gratitude for my friend's foresight. Thank you. For everything. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, she said firmly. You're stronger than you know, Sarah. You always have been. Michael just made you forget that for a while. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and preparations for the handover ceremony. Michael called several times, but I let each call go to voicemail. His messages grew increasingly desperate, then angry, then resigned. The final one simply said, I understand. Good luck, Sarah. Friday arrived bright and clear, a rare sunny day in Portland's typically rainy spring. I dressed carefully in a deep green blazer, Evergreen's signature color, over a simple white blouse and black pants. Professional but approachable, exactly the image I wanted to project. The original Evergreen location had been closed to regular customers for the event. When I arrived, it had been transformed. The tables rearranged to create a small stage, area, a banner hanging behind it that read, "A new chapter for Evergreen Coffee." The irony of the phrase wasn't lost on me. The Petersons greeted me warmly. Emma, petite with a silver bob that framed her kind face, hugged me tightly. Thank you for trusting us with your legacy, she whispered. Daniel, tall and distinguished, with salt and pepper hair, shook my hand firmly. We won't let you down, Sarah. The event itself was mercifully brief. A local business reporter introduced us. I said a few words about Evergreen's journey from a struggling single location to a beloved local chain, then symbolically handed the Petersons an oversized key to the store. There were photographs, applause, a few questions from the small gathering of press. One reporter raised her hand. Sarah, will your husband Michael be continuing in any capacity with Evergreen under the new ownership? I felt a momentary panic, but kept my expression neutral. Michael and I are no longer working together, professionally or personally. Today marks a new beginning for everyone involved with Evergreen Coffee. The reporter looked like she wanted to ask a follow-up, but Daniel smoothly interjected, directing attention to their plans for expanding Evergreen's community involvement. I shot him a grateful look. After the formal ceremony, there was a small reception. I mingled with the guests, loyal customers, local business owners, a few suppliers who had been with us from the beginning. Many expressed surprise at the sale and my departure, but none mentioned Michael specifically. It seemed the word had spread about our separation, creating a protective bubble around me. As the event wound down, I found myself standing by the front window, looking out at the street where I had first spotted this location 7 years ago. I had immediately known it was perfect. The corner spot with large windows, the proximity to the park, the residential neighborhood just a block away. Michael had been skeptical, arguing that we should look for something in a more commercial district. But I had insisted, believing that Evergreen could become part of the community rather than just another coffee shop. I had been right, and now I was saying goodbye to it all. A hand touched my shoulder gently. I turned to find Emma Peterson beside me. It's never easy to let go of something you love, she said softly. I smiled, blinking back unexpected tears. No, it's not. But knowing it's in good hands helps. You know, Emma said, Daniel and I have been discussing something. We'd like to name a blend after you, the Sarah Mitchell, our signature roast. If that's all right with you, of course. The gesture touched me deeply. I'd be honored, I replied. As I drove home from the ceremony, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The business that had been such a central part of my life was now in someone else's hands. The husband I had once loved was no longer my concern. For the first time in years, my future was entirely my own to shape. I pulled into my driveway to find a small package on my doorstep. No return address, just my name written in a familiar hand, Michael's. I hesitated before picking it up, unsure if I wanted any more reminders of him in my life. Curiosity won. Out. Inside the package was a small wooden box I recognized immediately, the one I had admired in a market during our trip to Costa Rica, but hadn't bought because Michael said it was overpriced. Inside was a note. You were right about the box, and about everything else. I'm sorry. Be happy, Sarah. Underneath the note was a set of keys, the spare keys to our house that Michael had taken when he left. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. He was truly letting go. I placed the box on my mantle, not as a reminder of Michael, but as a symbol of my own journey, of recognizing my worth, of fighting for what was mine, of building a new life from the ashes of the old one. That night, I sat on my back porch, with a cup of tea, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Tomorrow, I would wake up without Evergreen Coffee to run, without a failing marriage to try to save. Tomorrow would be the first day of my new life, filled with possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to imagine for too long. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Whatever comes next, we're here for you. Always. I smiled, typing back a quick, "Thank you." Then I set my phone aside and returned my gaze to the stars. Whatever came next, I was ready for it, More than ready. I was eager, because for the first time in years, I was truly free. 3 months had passed since I'd sold Evergreen. Coffee. The divorce papers were finalized, the money from the sale safely deposited in my account, and the house, once filled with memories of my life with Michael, now felt truly mine. I'd repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and donated anything that reminded me too much of him. It was a physical manifestation of the emotional transformation I'd undergone, clearing out the old to make room for the new. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen windows as I sipped my coffee, still Evergreen's special blend, though now I purchased it as a customer rather than an owner. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Coffee at 10? Got some interesting news." I smiled and texted back, "See you there, the usual spot?" "Actually," came the reply, "let's try something new. Meet me at Harbor View on 5th. Harbor View was an upscale cafe in the financial district, not our usual haunt. Jessica must have something significant to discuss if she wanted to meet there. My curiosity piqued. I finished my coffee and got ready for the day. The financial settlement from the divorce had been more than fair. Michael got his 25% from the business sale, minus the funds he'd embezzled for his weekend getaways with Rachel. I received the remaining 75%, plus full ownership of the house. It was enough money to give me time to figure out what came next, a luxury I hadn't allowed myself to contemplate during the frantic final days of my marriage. I dressed in a simple blue dress that made me feel confident and put together. As I slipped on my shoes, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Something had changed in me over these past months. The woman staring back at me stood taller, her eyes clearer, her smile more genuine. She wasn't defined by her relationship to anyone else. She was simply Sarah. Harbor View Cafe was bustling when I arrived. The sleek, modern space was filled with business people in suits having meetings over expensive lattes. It was a far cry from the warm, homey atmosphere of Evergreen, but it had its own charm. I spotted Jessica at a corner table near the windows, her laptop open in front of her. "This is different," I said as I sat down opposite her. "Very corporate." Jessica grinned, closing her laptop. "I thought a change of scenery might be appropriate, given what I want to talk to you about." A server approached our table and we both ordered a cappuccino for me, an Americano for Jessica. Once he'd left, I raised an eyebrow at my friend. "So, what's this interesting news?" Jessica leaned forward, her expression a mixture of excitement and seriousness. "I got a call from Victor Harmon yesterday." I frowned, trying to place the name. "Victor Harmon? From Summit Brews? Michael's buyer?" She nodded. "The very same. Apparently, he's been doing some research on you since the Evergreen sale fell through. He was impressed by what he found." "Impressed by what? That I outmaneuvered my cheating husband?" Jessica laughed. "Something like that, but also by your business acumen. Did you know Evergreen's customer retention rate was nearly double the industry average? Or that your employee turnover was less than half? These are metrics that corporate types like Harmon pay attention to." I shrugged. "That wasn't strategy. It was just treating people well." "Exactly," Jessica said, tapping the table for emphasis. "And that's why he wants to meet with you. Summit Brews has been trying to break into the premium coffee market for years, but they can't seem to create the kind of community loyalty that Evergreen had. He thinks you might be the missing piece." Our coffees arrived, giving me a moment to process this information. "He wants to hire me? After what happened with Michael?" "He's separating the artist from the art, so to speak. Michael's deception doesn't change the fact that you built something special with Evergreen. Harmon wants to know if you'd consider coming on as a consultant for their specialty coffee division." I took a sip of my cappuccino, which was good, but lacked the distinctive character of Evergreen's blends. "I don't know, Jess. Working for a corporate giant like Summit Brews feels wrong somehow, like I'd be betraying what Evergreen stood for." Jessica studied me for a moment. Or it could be an opportunity to bring what made Evergreen special to a larger audience. Think about it. You'd have the resources of a major corporation behind you, but the freedom to shape their approach to specialty coffee. What kind of compensation are we talking about? 6 figures, flexible hours, and creative control over their premium line. He's serious about this, Sarah. I gazed out the window at the bustling street below. Part of me was flattered by the offer. It was validation that what I'd built with Evergreen had real value beyond my personal attachment to it. But another part hesitated. Did I want to jump right back into the coffee world? Was that the fresh start I'd been promising myself? Tell him I'll think about it, I said finally. I need some time. Jessica nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course, there's no rush. But speaking of new opportunities, she reopened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a listing for a commercial property, a charming storefront with large windows and a small courtyard in the back. This just came on the market yesterday. It's in that arts district you've always loved. I studied the listing, feeling a flutter of something like excitement in my chest. It's beautiful, but why are you showing me this? Jessica gave me a knowing look. Because every time we walk past that neighborhood, you get this dreamy expression on your face. And because for all your talk about needing a break from business ownership, I see how your eyes light up when you pass by small, unique shops. You're an entrepreneur at heart, Sarah. It's in your blood. She wasn't wrong. Even in the midst of the divorce and the business sale, I'd caught myself daydreaming about what kind of venture I might create next. Something smaller, perhaps. More intimate. Something that was entirely mine from the beginning. What would I even do with a space like this? I mused, scrolling through the photos. That's for you to decide. A bookstore cafe? An artisanal gift shop? A wine bar? The possibilities are endless. Jessica closed her laptop. Just promise me you'll consider it before someone else snaps it up. I promise, I said, already imagining what the space could become. After coffee with Jessica, I found myself driving toward the arts district instead of heading home. The commercial property she'd shown me was on Maple Street, a charming tree-lined avenue filled with independent galleries, boutiques, and cafes. It was the kind of neighborhood where people strolled rather than rushed, where shop owners knew their customers by name. I parked my car and walked slowly down the street, taking in the atmosphere. A string quartet was playing outside one of the galleries, their music drifting through the air. Artists had set up easels in the small park at the end of the block, capturing the scene in watercolors and oils. This place had a soul, a character that resonated with me. When I reached the address from the listing, I stopped and stared. The storefront was even more charming in person, a 2-story brick building with large mullioned windows and a bright blue door. A for lease sign hung in the window, with a phone number to call for inquiries. On impulse, I took out my phone and dialed the number. A woman answered on the second ring. Portland Commercial Properties, this is Nancy. Hi, Nancy. I'm calling about the property on Maple Street. Is it possible to see inside? You're in luck. I'm actually just a few blocks away finishing up another showing. I could meet you there in 15 minutes if that works for you. That would be perfect, I replied, feeling a surge of excitement. While I waited, I peeked through the windows, trying to visualize what the interior might look like. The space appeared to be empty but well-maintained, with wooden floors and exposed brick walls. My mind was already racing with possibilities. Nancy arrived promptly, a cheerful woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor. You must be Sarah. I'm Nancy Wilson. She extended her hand, which I shook. Let's get you inside so you can see what you're working with. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt it. That same certainty I'd experienced when I found the first Evergreen location. This place had potential. The main floor was open and airy, with high ceilings and natural light streaming through the windows. A wooden staircase led to a small second level, which Nancy explained could serve as office space or additional seating, depending on the business. The previous tenant was here for 15 years, a jewelry designer who retired last month. Nancy explained as we toured the space. The landlord just had the floors refinished and the walls repainted, so it's ready for immediate occupancy. I ran my hand along the smooth brick of one wall. And the courtyard? Nancy smiled, leading me toward the back of the space. My personal favorite feature. She unlocked a door, revealing a small but charming outdoor area enclosed by ivy-covered walls. A mature maple tree provided dappled shade, and there was enough room for several tables or display areas. It's magical, I breathed, already imagining customers sitting out here on warm evenings, perhaps with glasses of wine and good books. The rent is competitive for the neighborhood, especially considering the courtyard, Nancy said, handing me a brochure with the details. But I should warn you, there's been significant interest already. If you're serious, I wouldn't wait too long to decide. I thanked her for the showing and promised to be in touch soon. As I walked back to my car, my mind was whirling with ideas. The space was perfect, but perfect for what? What kind of business did I want to create next? By the time I arrived home, I had a decision to make. 2 paths were opening before me. The corporate route with Summit Brews, which offered security, and validation, or taking another entrepreneurial risk with a new venture in the arts district. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto my back porch, letting the questions roll around in my mind. What did I truly want from this next chapter of my life? What would bring me fulfillment? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The screen showed a local number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice, unfamiliar but pleasant. Yes, this is she. Sarah, my name is Claire Martin. I'm a reporter with Portland Business Monthly. I'm writing a feature on local business owners who've successfully transitioned their companies, and I'd love to interview you about the Evergreen coffee sale. I hesitated. I'd been intentionally keeping a low profile since the handover ceremony, avoiding anything that might reopen the wounds of my marriage's end. How did you get my number? Daniel and Emma Peterson spoke very highly of you. They mentioned that you were the heart and soul behind Evergreen's success, and I became intrigued by your story. Part of me wanted to decline, to keep my personal journey private. But another part recognized that there was value in sharing what I'd learned about business, about resilience, about reclaiming your power. What kind of story are you looking to tell? I asked cautiously. One about reinvention, Claire replied. About women in business who don't let setbacks define them. Your transition from Evergreen was so graceful, at least publicly. I think our readers could learn a lot from your experience. Put that way, it was difficult to refuse. I suppose I could answer a few questions. Wonderful! Could we meet sometime next week? Perhaps at one of the Evergreen locations for a bit of ambiance? The thought of being interviewed at my former business made me uncomfortable. I'd prefer somewhere neutral, if that's all right. Of course. How about that new bistro on 10th? Lavender and thyme? Say Tuesday at noon? We confirmed the details, and I hung up, feeling a mixture of trepidation and excitement. This would be my first public discussion of what had happened with Evergreen, and, by extension, with Michael. It would require careful navigation to tell my truth without turning it into a tell-all about my failed marriage. The next morning, I woke with clarity. I called Jessica before I could second-guess myself. I want the space on Maple Street, I said when she answered. I knew it. Jessica's voice was triumphant. What changed your mind? Nothing changed. I think I knew the moment I saw it. I just needed time to admit it to myself. And what about Summit Brews? I'm going to decline. Working for a corporation isn't what I need right now. I need to build something of my own again, but on my terms. This time, something smaller, more personal. Have you decided what kind of business? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I have, actually. A bookstore cafe, but with a twist. I want to create a space that celebrates stories in all forms. Books, yes, but also local storytellers, writing workshops, poetry readings. A community hub for people who value authentic connection. It's perfect for you, Sarah. The warmth in Jessica's voice was affirming. What are you going to call it? New Chapter, I replied, the name coming to me with absolute certainty. Because that's what it is. For me, and hopefully for everyone who walks through its doors. I love it. Let me call Nancy and get the paperwork started before someone else snatches it up. After hanging up, I felt a surge of energy I hadn't experienced in months. I grabbed a notebook and began sketching ideas for the layout, jotting down concepts for events, listing local authors who might be interested in readings. The vision was coming to life on the page, and with each note, my excitement grew. This was what had been missing in my final years with Michael, the joy of creation, the thrill of building something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, Evergreen had become more about profit margins and expansion plans than about the community we'd originally set out to serve. New Chapter would be different. I would make sure of it. I was deep in planning mode when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a brief moment, I feared it might be Michael. Though our divorce was final, he had made a few attempts to contact me in recent weeks. Nothing threatening, just texts and emails expressing regret and asking if we could talk as friends. I had maintained my distance, politely but firmly. When I opened the door, however, I found Olivia standing there, a bouquet of sunflowers in her hands. "Surprise," she said, holding out the flowers. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. These are from all of us at Evergreen. Well, former Evergreen staff. We miss you." I took the flowers, touched by the gesture. "I miss you all too. Come in." Olivia followed me to the kitchen, where I put the sunflowers in a vase. "How is everyone doing with the transition? Are the Petersons treating you well?" "They're great, actually," Olivia said, taking a seat at the island. "Different management style than yours, but they really care about maintaining what made Evergreen special. Emma even started a monthly staff appreciation dinner." "I'm glad to hear it. I meant it too. Despite my initial heartache at selling the business, I was genuinely happy that it was thriving under its new ownership. But that's not why I'm here," Olivia continued, her expression growing more serious. "I ran into Michael yesterday." My hands stilled on the vase. "Oh?" "He asked about you. Wanted to know how you were doing, if you were seeing anyone new." I resumed arranging the flowers, careful to keep my voice neutral. "What did you tell him?" "That you were none of his business anymore." Olivia's fierce loyalty made me smile. But then he mentioned something strange. He said he's been working with a therapist, that he's changed. He asked if I thought you might be willing to meet with him for closure. I sighed, setting the vase on the counter. This isn't the first time he's reached out. I'm not interested. In reopening that door, even just a crack, Olivia nodded. That's what I figured. But I thought you should know. He seemed different, more humble. People like Michael don't change fundamentally, I said, more sharply than I intended. They just get better at presenting themselves in whatever light seems most advantageous at the moment. You're probably right, Olivia conceded. Then, noticing the notebook open on the counter, she tilted her head. What's all this? I felt a smile return to my face. My new project. I'm opening a bookstore cafe in the Arts District. It's going to be called New Chapter. Olivia's eyes lit up. Sarah, that's perfect. When? Where? Tell me everything. For the next hour, I shared my vision for New Chapter with Olivia, who listened enthusiastically and offered her own suggestions. By the time she left, promising to spread the word among our old Evergreen regulars, my earlier tension about Michael had dissipated, replaced by renewed excitement for my new venture. 2 days later, I signed the lease for the Maple Street property. Nancy seemed almost as excited as I was, confiding that she'd been hoping for a bookstore in the neighborhood for years. "This block needs a cozy spot where people can sit and read all afternoon," she said as we finalized the paperwork. That evening, I stood in the empty space that would soon become New Chapter, watching as the setting sun cast golden light through the windows. In the quiet, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I was undertaking. The risks, the hard work ahead, the possibility of failure. But there was no fear, only a calm determination and a deep sense of rightness. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Lease recorded, it's official. Drinks tonight to celebrate?" I typed back, "Absolutely. But first, I'm just sitting in my new space, soaking it all in." "Your space," came the reply. "I like the sound of that." So did I. This wasn't just a business venture. It was a declaration of independence, a statement that I was not defined by my past relationship or even by my previous success. New Chapter would be uniquely mine, a reflection of who I was becoming rather than who I had been. As I locked up and headed to meet Jessica, I couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few months. From the devastating phone call on my anniversary to signing the lease on a new business, I had traversed a landscape of betrayal, anger, and grief to arrive at this moment of genuine hope and possibility. Michael had asked for a divorce, thinking he would leave me with nothing. Instead, he had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of all, the chance to rediscover myself, to build something authentic, to write my own story. For that, ironically, I was grateful. The grand opening of New Chapter was set for Saturday morning, just 6 weeks after I'd signed the lease. Those weeks had been a whirlwind of activity, hiring contractors to build custom bookshelves, selecting the perfect espresso machine, curating an initial inventory of books, and recruiting staff who shared my vision for a space that nurtured both literary and human connections. I'd decided to keep the team small to start, just myself, a barista named Zoe, who had been one of my favorite employees at Evergreen, and a literature graduate student named Marcus, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of books and a warm way with customers. Together, we'd transformed the empty storefront into something magical. The night before the opening, I stood in the center of the finished space, taking it all in. The bookshelves lined the walls, organized not by traditional genres, but by emotional experience. Books that made me laugh until I cried. Stories that changed how I see the world. Novels that feel like coming home. A cozy reading nook occupied one corner, with oversized armchairs and reading lamps casting a warm glow. The cafe counter, crafted from reclaimed wood, anchored the opposite wall, with a glass case already filled with pastries from a local bakery. And the courtyard, my favorite feature, had been transformed with string lights, potted herbs, and comfortable seating. This place was entirely mine. Every decision, from the color of the walls, a soft sage green, to the selection of teas, reflected my personal taste and vision. There was a freedom in that which I hadn't experienced with Evergreen, where compromise with Michael had been constant and often contentious. "It's beautiful," Zoe said, coming to stand beside me. She had stayed late to help with the final preparations. "The neighborhood is already buzzing about tomorrow. I've heard at least 3 people this week say they can't wait for New Chapter to open. I just hope they show up," I admitted, voicing the fear that had been lurking beneath my excitement. Zoe gave me a look that was half amusement, half exasperation. "Sarah, you've built something special here. Trust me, they'll show up." I wanted to believe her. I'd invested a significant portion of the money from the Evergreen sale into this new venture, and while I wasn't financially desperate, the house was paid for and I had savings. Success would validate the huge life changes I'd made. It would prove that selling Evergreen hadn't been the end of my story, but merely a plot twist leading to something better. "Go home and get some rest," Zoe urged, grabbing her bag. Tomorrow's going to be busy. After she left, I did one final walk through of the space, checking that everything was perfect. As I locked up, I noticed a figure across the street watching the store. Even in the dim streetlight, I recognized him immediately, Michael. My stomach tightened. He raised a hand in hesitant greeting. After a moment's deliberation, I crossed the street to meet him, keeping my expression neutral. "What are you doing?" "Here?" I asked, not unkindly, but without the warmth that had once been automatic between us. Michael looked different, thinner, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "I heard about your new place from Olivia. I just wanted to see it for myself." "Well, now you have." He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "It looks amazing, Sarah. Really. I always knew you had great taste, but this is something else." The compliment felt genuine, which made it harder to maintain my guard. "Thank you." "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" "A little," I admitted, "but mostly excited." Michael smiled, a flash of the charm that had once captivated me. "You're going to be great. You always were the heart of Evergreen, you know." I was just the face. The acknowledgement, something he'd never conceded during our marriage, took me by surprise. "Why are you really here, Michael?" He took a deep breath as if steeling himself. "I wanted to apologize. Again. I know I've tried before, but I need you to understand how sorry I am for what I did. Not just the affair, but trying to sell the business behind your back, taking money from the accounts. All of it. It was unforgivable." I studied his face, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. Finding none, I simply said, "Thank you for saying that." "I've been seeing a therapist," he continued, words tumbling out as if he feared I might walk away before he could finish. "Trying to understand why I did what I did. It doesn't excuse anything, but I think I was afraid. Of failing, of not being the success story everyone expected. And instead of facing that fear, I took the easy way out. This was a side of Michael I'd rarely seen, vulnerable, self-reflective. Once upon a time, I would have embraced it, would have seen it as proof that our relationship could be salvaged. Now it simply confirmed that I'd made the right choice in moving on. "I hope therapy helps you, Michael. I really do." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you think we could ever be friends? Not now, but someday?" I considered the question honestly. "I don't know. Maybe, eventually. But I need more time and space." He nodded, accepting this without argument. "That's fair. I should let you get home. Big day tomorrow." He turned to go, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think New Chapter is going to be a huge success. You've always had a gift for creating spaces where people feel at home." As I watched him walk away, I felt a surprising lightness, not the rekindling of old feelings, but the release of lingering resentment. Michael's presence no longer had the power to upset my equilibrium. He was simply a person from my past, one whose actions had inadvertently set me on a path to greater self-discovery. I slept soundly that night, waking refreshed and ready for the day ahead. I dressed carefully in a deep blue dress that made me feel confident and comfortable, added a simple silver pendant necklace, and headed to New Chapter 2 hours before the official opening time. To my surprise, there was already a small group of people waiting outside when I arrived. Among them were Jessica and Olivia, holding a bouquet of flowers and a grand opening banner. Daniel and Emma Peterson, the buyers of Evergreen, were there too, Emma clutching a gift bag. "What are you all doing here so early?" I asked, touched by their presence. "We're your welcoming committee," Jessica explained, giving me a quick hug. "And your first customers, if you'll let us in." I laughed, unlocking the door. "I suppose I can make an exception for my biggest supporters." While Zoe and Marcus handled the final preparations behind the counter, my friends helped me hang the banner and arrange the flowers. Emma presented me with the gift bag, which contained a beautiful leather-bound journal with new chapter embossed on the cover. "For recording the beginning of your new adventure," she explained. "Daniel and I thought it was fitting." "It's perfect," I said, genuinely moved by their thoughtfulness. "Thank you both, and thank you for taking such good care of Evergreen." Daniel smiled warmly. "We're just building on the foundation you created. The community you fostered there is still going strong." At precisely 10 a.m., I flipped the sign on the door from closed to open and welcomed the first official customers to New Chapter. To my delight and relief, there was a steady stream of people throughout the morning. Neighbors curious about the new business, book lovers attracted by the unique categorization system, and former Evergreen regulars who had followed me to this new venture. By mid-afternoon, the initial rush had settled into a pleasant hum of activity. Several armchairs were occupied by people reading, the cafe tables were filled with quiet conversations, and there was a gentle coming and going of customers browsing the bookshelves. The atmosphere was exactly what I'd hoped to create. Peaceful, welcoming, alive with the soft energy of people connecting with books and each other. I was arranging a new display of local authors when the door chimed, and a woman in her early 30s entered. She looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't immediately place her. "Welcome to New Chapter," I greeted her with a smile. "Sarah Mitchell?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Claire Martin from Portland Business Monthly. We had an interview scheduled?" I'd been so caught up in the excitement of the opening that I'd completely forgotten about the interview. "Claire? Of course. I'm so sorry. With the opening today, it slipped my mind." She waved away my apology. "No worries at all. In fact, this is perfect timing. I can see your new venture in action." She glanced around approvingly. "Mind if I take some notes and photos while we talk?" "Not at all. Would you like some coffee?" "On the house, of course." Over cappuccinos in the courtyard, I shared my journey with Claire. From building Evergreen with Michael to the painful end of our marriage. From selling the business to creating New Chapter. I was careful to focus on the business aspects rather than the personal drama, emphasizing the lessons I'd learned about entrepreneurship and resilience. "What would you say was the most challenging part of the transition?" Claire asked, her recorder capturing our conversation. I considered the question. "Learning to trust my own vision completely. When you've been in a partnership for so long, both business and personal, you get used to compromise. Making every decision myself was initially terrifying, but ultimately, liberating." "And what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs facing a major life or business transition?" "Take time to grieve what you're leaving behind," I said after a moment's reflection. "But then focus on the future you want to create, not the past you're letting go of. And surround yourself with people who believe in you, especially when you're struggling to believe in yourself." Claire nodded, jotting something in her notebook. "One last question. What's next for Sarah Mitchell? Do you see New Chapter as the final chapter, or is this just the beginning?" I smiled, glancing around at the space I'd created. "I've learned not to make too many long-term predictions. Right now, I'm focused on making New Chapter everything I envisioned. But I'll say this, I've discovered that I'm much more resilient and capable than I ever gave myself credit for. So who knows what might be on the horizon." After Claire left, promising to send me a draft of the article before publication, I rejoined Zoe and Marcus at the front counter. The afternoon crowd had thinned, giving us a moment to regroup. "How are we doing on pastries?" I asked, peering into the display case. "Almost sold out," Zoe reported with a grin. "I called the bakery for a rush delivery tomorrow morning. They were thrilled." "And we've sold 27 books," Marcus added, checking the register. "Plus, 3 people signed up for the book club, and we have 8 reservations for the poetry reading next Friday." I felt a surge of pride and gratitude. "Thank you both for everything today. I couldn't have done this without you." They exchanged a look that suggested they'd been waiting for the right moment to tell me something. "Actually," Zoe said, One more thing you should know. A customer came in asking if we do any children's events. I remembered you mentioning wanting to start a Saturday morning story time, so I told her we're planning to launch that next month. She was so excited she said she'd spread the word to her mommy group. That's perfect, I said, already mentally rearranging the schedule to accommodate this new offering. We could set up the reading nook with floor cushions, maybe invite local authors occasionally. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Dinner tonight to celebrate your successful first day? Olivia's in too. I glanced at the time, surprised to see it was already approaching closing. The day had flown by in a blur of conversations, coffee, and the quiet satisfaction of watching my vision come to life. You two should head out, I told Zoe and Marcus. I can handle the closing routine. After they left, I moved through the space, straightening books, wiping down tables, and preparing the cafe area for tomorrow. The quiet was soothing after the busy day. As I worked, I reflected on how different this felt from my time at Evergreen. There, closing had often been a source of tension. Michael rushing through tasks, impatient to move on to the next thing, while I insisted on ensuring everything was perfect for the morning staff. Here, the rhythm was entirely my own. I could take my time, adjusting displays that didn't feel quite right, making notes about which books had attracted the most interest, planning small improvements for the coming weeks. This business wasn't just mine on paper, it was mine in spirit, a true reflection of my values and vision. I was locking the register when my phone rang. The screen showed unknown number, but I answered anyway, riding the high of the successful day. Hello. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice, unfamiliar but pleasant. Yes, it is. Sarah, my name is Vanessa Howard. I'm an editor at Cornerstone Publishing. One of our authors was at your store opening today and was quite impressed with what you've created. She mentioned that you have an interesting story of your own, something about rebuilding after selling a successful coffee business. I blinked, surprised by this unexpected call. That's right. I previously co-owned Evergreen Coffee before opening New Chapter. We're putting together a collection of essays on women entrepreneurs who've navigated major transitions. Would you be interested in contributing your story? It would be a chapter of about 5,000 words, focusing on the lessons you've learned and how they might help others facing similar challenges. The idea of sharing my experience in written form had never occurred to me. I'd always seen myself as a creator of spaces, not of narratives. But wasn't that exactly what I'd done with New Chapter? Created a space that celebrated stories? Perhaps it was time to add my own to the mix. I'd be interested in learning more, I said cautiously. Could you send me some information about the project? Absolutely. I'll email you details tomorrow, and if you decide it's not for you, no pressure at all. But based on what I've heard, I think your perspective would be valuable to many women navigating business and personal transitions. After we hung up, I finished closing the store, turning off lights and setting the alarm. As I stepped outside and locked the door behind me, I paused to look at the New Chapter sign glowing softly in the evening darkness. 6 months ago, I had been standing in a hotel room, reeling from my husband's betrayal, uncertain of my future. Now, I stood before a business I'd built entirely on my own terms. The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael had asked for a divorce on our anniversary, thinking he was taking everything from me, our marriage, our business, our shared future. Instead, he had inadvertently given me the push I needed to discover my own strength, to build something that was authentically mine. I took a photo of the storefront with my phone and sent it to Jessica with the message, "Rain check on dinner? Exhausted but happy. First day was a success." Her reply came almost immediately. "So proud of you. This is just the beginning." As I walked to my car, I felt a profound sense of peace. The anger and hurt that had driven me in those early days after Michael's call had transformed into something far more powerful. A quiet confidence in my own resilience, a certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. Michael had asked for a divorce on our anniversary, little knowing that I had already sold our business. But the greater truth was this: little did he know that in trying to diminish me, he had set me free. The next morning, I arrived at New Chapter an hour before opening, carrying a box of fresh pastries from the bakery down the street. The Sunday crowd would likely be different from Saturdays. More leisurely browsers, people looking to settle in with a book and coffee for a few hours. I wanted everything to be perfect for them. As I arranged the pastries in the display case, I noticed a small envelope that had been slipped under the door. My name was written on the front in an unfamiliar hand. Inside was a simple note. "Your store reminded me why I love books. Thank you for creating this space. A grateful reader." I smiled, pinning the note to the small bulletin board behind the counter. This was why I had created New Chapter, not just as a business venture, but as a gift to fellow book lovers, a space where stories could work their magic. Zoe arrived, bringing with her the Sunday newspapers, which we displayed on a rack near the cafe counter. "Ready for day 2? She asked, tying on her apron. "More than ready," I replied, and I meant it. After years of compromise and second-guessing myself, I was finally living authentically, building something that reflected my deepest values. New Chapter wasn't just the name of my bookstore, it was the perfect description of this phase of my life. As I flipped the sign to open and welcomed the first customers of the day, I felt a deep certainty that this was exactly where I was meant to be. Not because fate or destiny had led me here, but because I had made it happen, one brave choice at a time. Michael's request for a divorce had been intended as an ending. Instead, it had become the catalyst for my new beginning. And for that, ironically, I would always be grateful. 6 months had passed since the opening of New Chapter, and autumn had descended upon Portland, painting the city in rich golds and crimsons. The maple tree in the courtyard had transformed into a fiery canopy, its leaves occasionally drifting down to land on the tables where customers sat with their books and coffee. The seasonal change felt symbolic, a reminder that transformation could be beautiful, necessary, and right on time. The bookstore cafe had exceeded even my most optimistic projections. What had begun as a quiet refuge for bibliophiles had blossomed into a genuine community hub. Our children's story time on Saturday mornings regularly filled the reading nook with excited little ones and their grateful parents. The Tuesday evening book club had grown so popular, we'd had to create a waiting list. Local authors approached us weekly about hosting readings, and our poetry nights had become standing room-only events. This particular morning, I arrived earlier than usual. The Portland Business Monthly article featuring New Chapter had just hit newsstands, and I was eager to see the final version. Claire Martin had been true to her word, sending me a draft to review before publication. But seeing it in print would make it real in a way the draft hadn't. I unlocked the door, breathing in the comforting aroma of books and polished wood. The quiet of the empty store was something I treasured. These moments before the day began in earnest, when possibilities hung in the air like dust motes in morning light. I moved through the space with practiced efficiency, turning on lights, starting the coffee machines, checking that everything was in place for the day ahead. The magazine lay on the front counter where Zoe had left it the night before with a post-it note. "You're famous. Page 42. I smiled at her enthusiasm and flipped to the article. There I was, photographed in the courtyard, looking more confident than I remembered feeling that day. The headline read, "After the Storm, How Sarah Mitchell Turned Personal Setback into Professional Triumph." Claire had done a beautiful job, capturing the essence of my journey without sensationalizing the personal aspects. The focus was exactly where I'd hoped it would be, on resilience, reinvention, and the courage to begin again. There was only a brief mention of Michael and our divorce, framed as the catalyst that had propelled me toward creating something authentically mine. The bell above the door chimed, interrupting my reading. I looked up, expecting to see Marcus arriving for his shift, but instead found a woman I'd never met before. She was in her 50s, elegantly dressed, with a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "I'm sorry, we're not quite open yet," I said, moving to greet her. "I know, and I apologize for the intrusion." Her voice had a slight accent I couldn't quite place. "I was hoping to speak with Sarah Mitchell?" "That's me," I replied, curious now. She extended her hand. "Eleanor Blackwell. I'm with the Women's Business Alliance. We'd like to invite you to be our keynote speaker at next month's annual conference." I blinked, taken aback by the unexpected offer. "Me? Are you sure?" Eleanor laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Quite sure. I just read your story in Portland Business Monthly, but we've had our eye on you since the Evergreen sale. Your journey exemplifies exactly what our organization stands for: women supporting each other through transitions, finding their authentic voice in business, and creating ventures that reflect their values." She handed me an elegant envelope containing a formal invitation. The conference draws about 500 attendees, mainly women entrepreneurs and executives from across the Pacific Northwest. We'd love for you to share your experience and the lessons you've learned along the way. Public speaking had never been my strength. That had been Michael's domain during our Evergreen days. He had been the one giving interviews, speaking at industry events, while I handled the behind-the-scenes operations. The thought of addressing hundreds of people made my stomach tighten. "I'm flattered," I said carefully, "but I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I'm not a professional speaker, and my story isn't exactly a blueprint for success. A lot of what happened was specific to my situation." Eleanor's expression grew more earnest. "That's precisely why we want you. Too often, the business world presents success as a straight line upward, when the reality is far messier. Your willingness to start over, to build something new that aligned with your values, even after a significant personal setback, that's the kind of authentic leadership our members need to hear about." She gestured around at New Chapter. "What you've created here isn't just a business. It's a statement about what matters to you. That kind of clarity is rare and valuable." Her words resonated more than I wanted to admit. Wasn't this exactly what I'd hoped to create with New Chapter? A space that reflected my authentic self? Perhaps sharing that journey with others was a natural extension of the work I'd already begun. "Could I have some time to think about it?" I asked. "Of course. The invitation includes all the details, and my contact information is there as well. We'd need to know by the end of next week to finalize the program." She glanced around the bookstore with appreciation. "Regardless of your decision, I'll be back as a customer. This place is exactly what our neighborhood needed." After she left, I tucked the invitation into my bag and continued with the morning preparations, my mind turning over this new opportunity. The conference was just 1 month away, hardly enough time to prepare a keynote address. And yet, something about Eleanor's request had sparked an unexpected excitement. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Just saw the article. You're a rock star. Coffee later to celebrate?" I smiled, typing back, "Definitely. And I have something to run by you." The day unfolded with its usual rhythm, the morning rush of people grabbing coffee on their way to work, the mid-morning lull filled with seniors and work-from-home professionals, settling in with laptops and books, the lunch crowd seeking sandwiches and quiet reading time. By mid-afternoon, when Jessica arrived, I was ready for a break. We settled in the courtyard with cappuccinos, the autumn sun filtering through the maple leaves above us. I showed her the invitation from Eleanor. "You have to do it," Jessica said immediately, her eyes lighting up. "I don't know," I hesitated. Public speaking isn't really my thing. And what would I even say? Jessica gave me a look that was half exasperation, half fondness. "Sarah, in the past year you've navigated a divorce, outsmarted your ex-husband's attempt to steal your business, sold that business for nearly double what he was planning to accept, and built an entirely new venture that's already thriving. I think you can handle a 20-minute speech. Put that way, it did sound like I had something worth sharing. When you list it all like that, it sounds impressive. Living through it just felt like doing what needed to be done. That's exactly why you should speak. You're not going to give them some polished, sanitized version of success. You'll give them the messy, complicated truth that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best decisions if we're brave enough to make them. I took a sip of my cappuccino, considering her words. I'll think about it. Jessica changed the subject, updating me on her latest case. A small tech startup being circled by a larger company looking to acquire their innovative software. The founder reminds me of you, she said, determined not to be taken advantage of, even if it means walking away from a significant payday. We chatted for nearly an hour before Jessica had to leave for a client meeting. As she gathered her things, she paused, her expression growing serious. Have you heard from Michael lately? I shook my head. Not since he showed up the night before the opening. Why? I ran into Rachel at a networking event last week. She mentioned he's back in Portland, looking to start a new business. Some kind of tech-enabled coffee delivery service. I felt a momentary tightness in my chest, but it passed quickly. Good for him. Portland's a big city. Plenty of room for both of us to build our separate lives. Jessica studied me, perhaps searching for signs that I was more affected than I was letting on. Finding none, she smiled. Look at you, the epitome of growth and moving on. I'm proud of you, Sarah. After she left, I returned to the counter, where Marcus was ringing up a customer's purchase. The shop was quiet, just a few regulars settled in with books and laptops. It was the perfect time to work on the monthly newsletter I'd started sending to our growing list of loyal customers. I had just opened my laptop when the bell chimed again. Looking up, I was startled to see Rachel standing in the doorway. Michael's former mistress, now ex-girlfriend according to what Olivia had told me, looked uncertain, her gaze darting around the store before landing on me. "Hello, Sarah?" she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Your place is lovely." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "What brings you here?" Rachel approached the counter, fidgeting with the strap of her handbag. "I wanted to talk to you, actually. Do you have a moment?" Curiosity overrode my initial impulse to decline. "Sure. Would you like a coffee?" "That would be nice. A latte, if that's okay." I nodded to Marcus, who moved to prepare her drink. "Let's sit in the courtyard. It's quieter." Once we were settled at a table beneath the maple tree, Rachel took a deep breath. "I've been meaning to come see you for months, but I wasn't sure how you'd receive me. I wouldn't blame you if you asked me to leave." "Why are you here, Rachel?" I kept my voice even, neither hostile nor welcoming. She looked down at her latte. "To apologize, primarily. What Michael and I did to you was wrong. I knew he was married, and I pursued the relationship anyway. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility, that his marriage was already over, but that was just a convenient lie." Her candor caught me off guard. I had expected excuses or justifications, not this straightforward acknowledgement. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "But why now? It's been nearly a year." Rachel met my gaze. "Because I'm starting over too, in my own way. I'm leaving Portland next month, moving to Seattle for a fresh start. But before I go, I wanted to make amends where I could." She hesitated, then continued. "There's something else you should know. When Michael and I were together, he talked about selling Evergreen. But what he told me was different from what actually happened." My interest sharpened. "How so?" "He said you had agreed to sell, that you were both ready to move on to new ventures. He presented it as a mutual decision." She shook her head, regret evident in her expression. "I believed him because I wanted to." It wasn't until after everything fell apart that I realized how he had manipulated the situation. And me. This revelation wasn't entirely surprising. but it was oddly validating to hear it from Rachel herself. Michael always was skilled at presenting reality in whatever light suited his purposes, I observed. Yes, Rachel agreed quietly. I discovered that too late. She took a sip of her latte, her expression thoughtful. You know, after we broke up, I kept thinking about how differently you and I handled Michael. You stood your ground, protected what was yours. I just went along with whatever he said, believing what I wanted to believe. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for her. Rachel wasn't the villain in this story. She was another woman who had fallen for Michael's charm, only to discover too late the manipulation beneath it. We all make mistakes, I said, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. The important thing is learning from them. She nodded, looking grateful for the absence of condemnation. I have. That's why I'm leaving, to build something new on my own terms. She glanced around at New Chapter. Like you did, though not nearly as impressive. We talked for a while longer, the conversation gradually shifting from the past to our respective futures. Rachel was planning to open a small graphic design studio in Seattle, focusing on branding for women-owned businesses. It was a far cry from the coffee delivery service Michael was apparently pursuing. As she prepared to leave, Rachel paused. Can I ask you something? How did you do it? Move forward so purposefully after everything fell apart? I considered the question, searching for an honest answer rather than a neat platitude. I think I stopped seeing the end of my marriage as something that happened to me and started seeing it as something that happened for me. It forced me to reclaim parts of myself I'd compromised or forgotten altogether. Rachel absorbed this, nodding slowly. That makes sense. Thank you for talking with me today. I wasn't sure you would. A year ago, I probably wouldn't have, I admitted. But holding on to anger requires too much energy. Energy better spent on building something meaningful. After she left, I returned to my laptop, but found myself unable to focus on the newsletter. Instead, I opened a blank document and began typing, almost without conscious thought. The call that changed everything, from ending to beginning. The words flowed surprisingly easily. My journey from that devastating phone call on my anniversary to the creation of New Chapter, the lessons learned along the way, the unexpected freedom I'd found in starting over. By the time I looked up, 2 hours had passed, and I had the rough outline of a keynote speech. I saved the document and took out the invitation from Eleanor Blackwell. The idea of sharing my story no longer filled me with anxiety. Instead, I felt a quiet certainty that this was the right next step, not just for me, but potentially for other women facing their own crossroads. I composed a brief email accepting the invitation, then closed my laptop. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the courtyard, and customers had begun to drift in for after-work coffee and browsing. I moved back to the front counter, where Zoe was handling a small line. Need help? I asked, slipping behind the counter. She smiled gratefully. Always. We've been unusually busy this afternoon. As I prepared espresso drinks and recommended books, I felt a profound sense of contentment. This was exactly where I wanted to be. Building something authentic, connecting with a community that valued what I valued, growing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The following week brought a flurry of activity. Between running New Chapter and preparing for the Women's Business Alliance conference, I barely had time to think about Michael or the past. My keynote speech was taking shape, becoming less about the specific events of my divorce and more about the universal experience of reclaiming one's identity after a significant loss. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Michael walked into New Chapter. I was arranging a new display of local poetry when the bell chimed. Looking up, I felt a jolt of surprise at the sight of him standing just inside the door, rain dripping from his coat. He seemed different somehow, less confident, more thoughtful. But there was still that unmistakable charisma that had first drawn me to him years ago. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his voice careful, measured. "Is this a bad time?" For a moment, I considered saying yes, asking him to leave. But the anxiety I'd expected to feel at seeing him again didn't materialize. Instead, I felt a curious calm, as if Michael had been reduced from a looming presence in my life to simply a person from my past. "I have a few minutes," I replied, gesturing to a quiet corner where two armchairs faced each other. "Coffee?" He shook his head. "Just water, if that's okay." I brought him a glass of water and sat across from him, waiting. Michael seemed unusually hesitant, turning the glass in his hands before finally meeting my gaze. "Your place is amazing," he said. "It suits you perfectly." "Thank you. Why are you here, Michael?" He took a deep breath. "I heard you're speaking at the Women's Business Alliance conference next month." This surprised me. "How did you know about that?" "Eleanor Blackwell is an old client. When she mentioned you were the keynote speaker, I wanted to make sure you knew that I wouldn't be there. I don't want my presence to make you uncomfortable or affect your presentation in any way." The thoughtfulness of this gesture was unexpected. "I appreciate that," I said cautiously. "But that can't be the only reason you came?" Michael set his water down, his expression serious. "No, it's not. I also wanted to tell you that I've been seeing a therapist for the past 6 months, working through a lot of things, including why I sabotaged our marriage and tried to take Evergreen from you." I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "The truth is, I was jealous," he admitted, the words seeming to cost him. "Evergreen was supposed to be my vision, my success story, but it was always more yours than mine. The customers came for the atmosphere you created, the community you built. I was just the face, the marketing guy. And instead of being proud of what we created together, I resented that I couldn't claim it as solely my achievement." His candor was disarming. This was a level of self-awareness I'd never witnessed from Michael during our marriage. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I owe you the truth, and because—" He hesitated. "Because I'm trying to make amends as part of my recovery, not to win you back or change anything about our past, but because it's the right thing to do." I studied him, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found none. "Thank you for that," I said finally. "It means something to hear you acknowledge what happened." Michael nodded, looking relieved. "There's one more thing. I'm starting a new business venture." "The coffee delivery service," I interrupted. "Jessica mentioned it." He looked surprised. "Word travels fast." "Yes, it's a subscription service for premium coffee beans. But I want you to know that I'm not trying to compete with what you built at Evergreen. This is different, and I'm being careful to ensure there's no overlap with the Petersons' business model." "You don't need my permission, Michael. Portland's coffee market is big enough for many players." "I know, but given our history, I wanted to be transparent." He paused, then added, "I'm also making sure to do everything completely above board this time. Full disclosure with my investors, clear business structures. I learned my lesson the hard way." There was a time when such words from Michael would have filled me with skepticism. Now, I found myself believing him, not because I trusted him implicitly, but because I could see the genuine effort behind his words. "I wish you success with your new venture," I said, and meant it. Michael's happiness or failure no longer affected my own well-being. We were truly separate entities now. He looked relieved, as if he'd expected a more hostile reception. "Thank you. And I wish you continued success with new chapter. It's something special, Sarah. Just like Evergreen was, but more authentically you." We talked a bit longer, the conversation drifting towards safer topics. Mutual acquaintances, changes in the neighborhood, the unusually rainy autumn. When Michael finally rose to leave, he extended his hand. I know we can never go back to how things were, and that's probably for the best. But I hope that someday we might reach a place where we can occasionally cross paths without it being awkward or painful. I shook his hand, feeling the strange formality of the gesture with someone who had once been my husband. I think we just did. After he left, I returned to my work, surprised by how little his visit had disrupted my emotional equilibrium. A year ago, seeing Michael would have thrown me into turmoil. Now, it was simply an interaction, meaningful in its way, but not defining. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I refined my keynote speech, practiced it for Jessica and Olivia, who offered constructive feedback and enthusiastic support, and continued to nurture New Chapter's growth. We launched a new initiative, a monthly local author spotlight that quickly became one of our most popular events. The morning of the Women's Business Alliance conference dawned clear and crisp. I dressed with care in a tailored navy suit that made me feel both professional and authentically myself. As I fastened the silver pendant necklace that had become something of a personal talisman, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me bore little resemblance to the one who had stood in a hotel room a year ago, reeling from her husband's betrayal. This woman stood taller, her gaze clearer, her smile more genuine. She wasn't defined by her relationship to anyone else. She was simply Sarah, a woman who had reclaimed her story. The conference venue was an elegant downtown hotel, its ballroom filled with round tables and a raised stage at the front. As I checked in at the registration desk, I was greeted with warmth and enthusiasm, as if I were already a valued member of this community rather than a newcomer. Eleanor found me almost immediately, guiding me through the schedule for the day. You'll be speaking after lunch, she explained. It's our prime slot. Everyone's settled in. Energy is high. Perfect for the message you're bringing. I spent the morning attending other sessions, listening to women share their expertise on topics ranging from sustainable business practices to navigating male-dominated industries. The quality of the presentations was impressive, increasing my own nervousness about measuring up. During the lunch break, I found a quiet corner to review my notes one last time. My phone buzzed with a series of encouraging texts from Jessica. You're going to knock them dead. Just be yourself. That's who they want to hear from. From Olivia. The whole team is cheering for you. We'll have champagne waiting at New Chapter. To celebrate. From Daniel and Emma Peterson. Wishing you all the best today. Evergreen's legacy is in good hands with your voice representing women entrepreneurs. The last message touched me deeply. I hadn't expected the Petersons to remember or care about my speaking engagement. Their continued support reinforced that the sale of Evergreen had been the right decision for everyone involved. When it was finally time for my keynote, I felt a surprising calm descend as I walked to the podium. Looking out at the sea of faces, women of all ages, backgrounds, and stages in their entrepreneurial journeys, I set aside my prepared notes and spoke from the heart. A year ago, I received a phone call that I thought would destroy me. I began. My husband of 7 years asked for a divorce on our anniversary, announcing he had sold our business and was moving on with someone else. In that moment, it felt like the end of everything I had built, everything I had believed in. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that this devastating moment would become the catalyst for the most authentic chapter of my life. Over the next 30 minutes, I shared my journey, not as a victim who had overcome adversity, but as a woman who had discovered her own strength through necessary transformation. I spoke about the business lessons: always read what you sign, know your worth in the marketplace, build genuine relationships with your community, and the personal ones. Trust your instincts, surround yourself with people who champion your growth. Recognize when holding on costs more than letting go. The truth is, I concluded, That sometimes what looks like an ending is actually an invitation to begin again, more authentically, more courageously, more aligned with who you truly are. My ex-husband asked for a divorce on our anniversary, thinking he was taking everything from me. Little did he know that in that moment, he was actually setting me free to create something far more meaningful than what I was losing. The applause that followed was thunderous. As I stepped away from the podium, women rose to their feet, creating a standing ovation that moved me to tears. This wasn't just affirmation of my personal journey, it was recognition of a universal truth that resonated with so many in that room. After the keynote, I was surrounded by attendees eager to share their own stories of reinvention, to ask questions about New Chapter, to exchange business cards and make connections. One woman in particular stood out, a silver-haired entrepreneur, in her 60s who waited patiently until the crowd had thinned. "I divorced my husband 30 years ago under similar circumstances," she told me, her eyes twinkling. "Best thing that ever happened to me, though I couldn't see it at the time. I built a manufacturing company that now employs over 200 people, all because he thought he could leave me with nothing." She pressed a business card into my hand. "If you ever want to explore expanding New Chapter beyond one location, call me. I invest in women who have fire in their hearts and clear vision in their heads. You have both." By the time I finally left the conference, it was early evening. My phone was filled with missed calls and messages, from Jessica and Olivia wanting to know how it went, from Eleanor thanking me for an absolutely perfect keynote, from several journalists requesting interviews. There was even a text from Michael. "Heard your speech was incredible. Not surprised. Congratulations." I decided to walk the 15 blocks back to New Chapter rather than calling a rideshare. The crisp autumn air felt invigorating, and I needed time to process the day. As I walked, I found myself mentally sketching plans for the bookstore's future, a potential second location in a year or two, perhaps a publishing imprint for local authors, maybe even writing a book of my own about business reinvention. The possibilities seemed endless, limited only by my own imagination and courage. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I was making choices based solely on what felt right for me, not what would please someone else or meet external expectations. When I finally reached New Chapter, I found the store filled with friends and staff. Someone had hung a banner reading, "Congratulations, Sarah," over the main bookshelf, and Zoe was pouring champagne into glasses. There were cheers as I entered, faces bright with genuine affection and pride. "To Sarah," Jessica toasted, raising her glass high, "who turned an ending into the most beautiful beginning." As glasses clinked and conversation flowed around me, I gazed around at the space I'd created, at the community that had formed within its walls, at the future that stretched before me. Michael had asked for a divorce on our anniversary, thinking he was writing the final chapter of our story. Instead, he had unwittingly given me the freedom to author my own. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and the last guest departed, I found myself alone in the courtyard. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights, the autumn air carrying a hint of wood smoke. I tilted my face upward, breathing deeply, feeling a profound gratitude for the path that had led me here. Not despite its painful twists and turns, but because of them. My journey had taught me that the most devastating moments can become doorways to our most authentic lives, if we have the courage to step through them. Michael had asked for a divorce, little knowing that I had already begun the process of reclaiming my power by securing the business. But the greater revelation had been discovering that in losing what I thought I wanted, I had found what I truly needed: my own voice, my own vision, my own value. I smiled up at the stars, then turned to lock up New Chapter for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new growth. And I was ready for all of it, not as someone's wife or business partner, but as wholly, unapologetically, myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.